We have entered the modern era of comic books, at least according to how CGC bills customers for comics. It's 1975. Let's take a look at the top books submitted to CGC from that year, up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. And before we get started, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Check out the description of this video for links to my eBay store, email, whatnot, and Instagram. So, it's 1975, and CGC denotes the difference between vintage, comic books up through 1974, and modern, 1975 to present. Which means that there are a lot more modern years than vintage years, but that's beside the point. And we're entering the point where there are more high-grade books. There are more books that were pretty well preserved, as we're right in the midst of the Bronze Age. So what we do here is we use cgcdata.com. And I'm going to talk about the number of copies on the CGC Census. In the last week or so, what has it been? 2 weeks? CGC has changed the census to the population report. And I'm not sure that CGC data is kept up to date. But for our purposes, it doesn't really matter. We're just using this as a platform to explore the history of comics, look at comics that were popularly submitted, comics that collectors are after, and 2 weeks for books that have been around for 50 years doesn't really have much of an impact. So I take the information from cgcdata.com. We go over count down the top 10 books, and we look at the top 10 books for both DC and Marvel, and the top books from each of the other publishers, which gets quite interesting at times. So we're going to go through that, and again, we only talk about blue labels, no green, yellow, or purple, because we're just kind of giving you an idea. We don't talk about values too much, or we will talk about other keys and other books of high value, and there's a couple of those in particular. Basically, I went through Heritage Auctions, and any book that had sold, there was one book that sold it at 10, but that didn't really matter, that sold over $5,000, I put on the list, and there are going to be a few of those. But let's start with number 10 on our list, and that book is Strange Tales number 180, the first appearance of Gamora. It is a Jim Starlin story, cover, and art, and Gamora, of course, a character that has spiked in popularity due to Zoe Saldana's portrayal of her in the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers films. And we will see more on this list, I think, of books that have been kind of driven by, I wouldn't say movie spec so much in this case, as just the movies highlighting characters and making people desire those characters, because this is a character that has increased her popularity since the movies came out, and it's kind of maintained. We're probably not going to see Gamora anymore, will we? I don't know. But it is number 10 on our list, and it is a total of 2,057 copies on the census. At number 9 on the list is Amazing Spider-Man, number 149. This is... Oh, my goodness. What's going on here? This is the first appearance of the Spider-Man clone. My computer's acting weird. It's jumping all over the place. And it's the death of the Jackal. The Jackal, of course, every time he has a minor key, it's buried with something else. You know, first appearance of Gwen and Harry, first appearance of the Punisher. And it's also appearance of Gwen Stacy clone. Gwen Stacy clone. Did I say Glenn Stacy? Gwen Stacy. Jerry Conway did the story. Ross Andrew, Mike Esposito did the art. Gil Kane and Frank Giacoia did the cover. So the Spider clone become quite popular over the years, a character that they've gone back to again and again, and even appeared in the Spider-Verse movies. So this key book has a total of 2,237 copies on the census. At number 8 on our list is Inhumans number 1. Doug Mensch story, George Perez cover, and art, and Gil Kane cover. This is the first of a series. The Inhumans ran for 12 issues. A lot of them done by George Perez. Early work in his career. And there was that lousy TV series that didn't really help the Inhumans at all. This is one of those number ones, like mid-70s, for both DC and Marvel that were kind of highly advertised. So we see a lot of more copies, and I think a lot more high-grade copies, because I think there were a lot of copies that weren't read. And not necessarily turned by newsstands. Maybe collectors picked them up and, said, oh, let me get some number ones. I'm not sure, but that is Inhumans number one. As a matter of fact, it has 334 9/8 on the census, for about maybe 15% of the total number of copies on the census. The mean grade is 8.80. The next highest mean grade on the top 10 is 8.35. So there are a lot of high grade copies of this. Could be a warehouse find, I'm not sure. Total census count of 2,285. Number 7 on the list is a top DC book. It's Joker, number 1. Or as it says, oddly, on the CGC label, they use the index. The article, I should say. The Joker, number 1. Usually, even if the title and the indicia have the or a or an in front of it, CGC ignores that. Just for alphabetizing purposes, I suppose. But the longstanding Batman villain, after 35 years, got his own title. It was due to relaxing in the comics code that you could have a villain as the main character. And you have Denny O'Neil's story, or Novik did the art, and Dick Giordano did the cover with all these other Batman villains. The Joker series ran for just 9 issues. But number 1 is a collectible book, 2,979 copies on the census. Another issue, number 1, it comes in at number 6, and that is Iron Fist, number 1. Chris Claremont story, John Byrne and Al Williams art. Gil Kane and Frank Giacoia did the cover with Iron Fist versus Iron Man. Iron Fist had been in Marvel Premiere the year before, ran for 6-7 issues in there. Then he had his own series, which ran for 15 issues before he joined forces with Luke Cage, Power Man, and it became Power Man and Iron Fist for the rest of the run. And there are some keys in this one. And Chris Claremont, one of his earlier works here, as he was doing the Iron Fist stories. This has a census count of 3,008. Coming in at number 5 on the list. And we're going to have to get used to this title, I think, for a few years, near the top of the list. This is X-Men number 96. It's the first appearance of Moira McTaggart, who was a confidant of the X-Men, played by Rose Byrne in the movies. Somewhat of a connection historically to Charles Xavier. And then years later is revealed that she was an Omega-level mutant. Chris Claremont did the story. Dave Cockrum did the art and the cover. 3,251 copies on the census. At number 4 on the list is X-Men number 95. Claremont, Cockrum, Gil Kane did the cover with Cockrum inking it. This is the second in-title appearance of the new X-Men, and it's the death of Thunderbird. They killed him off pretty quickly. And I remember when I got a collection of these early X-Men books and I was reading them, I read the letters page, and basically Marv Wolfman was there at the time, editor at the time, and he said, yeah, we really couldn't find anything to do with the character. Now remember, the X-Men were created by Len Wein. Chris Claremont took over the scripting duties, so maybe Claremont, I'm gonna guess, didn't like Thunderbird, and then killed him off. But it did kind of raise the stakes for the team. That, oh wow, third outing and already somebody's dying. This particular book comes in with a census count of 3,455. Number 3 on the list is Werewolf by Night, number 32. The origin and first appearance of Moon Knight. Doug Mensch did the story. Don Perlin did the art, and Gil Kane and Al Milgrom did the cover. This book got hot during the boom in the anticipation of the Moon Knight TV series. I enjoyed the series. I don't think it was a resounding success, and there's not a whole lot of clarity of what the MCU plans to do with the character going forward. If you look back in the history in my channel, 360 Comics and we did weekly reviews of the Moon Knight show. That was kind of fun. So this was in the midst of Spec and the comic boom all coming together, which really pushed the profile of this book. Probably got more copies graded, but Moon Knight is a really popular character. And there's a huge gap between number 4 and here, number 3. So I don't think the TV show put him any higher than he would have been ordinarily. Werewolf by Night coming in with number 32 with a census count of 5,702. Number 2 on the list, X-Men 94. The second appearance of the new X-Men, the, I guess, 5th appearance of Wolverine, second appearance of Nightcrawler, Storm, Colossus, and Thunderbird. The first Chris Claremont script on X-Men, co-wrote it, I guess, with Len Wein as the carryover from another book, which I will talk about. Dave Cockrum did, and Bob McLeod did the art. Gil Kane and Cockrum did the cover. Not the most exciting cover. And the other thing about the cover is there's no Wolverine. Evidently, the idea was the Colossus was going to be the big star as the strong guy. And Wolverine actually, I referenced the letters pages. Some of those early letters pages, the writers were like, yeah, we don't like Wolverine. Get rid of him. That opinion on the whole changed in fandom. And Wolverine, of course, a hugely popular character. And this X-Men run, coveted by collectors, people like to put together, maybe giant size in 94 through 143. And this is the continuation. Been 67 through 80 or through 93 were reprints. This was a book that was dead and buried, and then it got this resuscitation, became one of the more popular books. The other thing is, I don't think the print runs were enormous on this book. It probably was one of their slower sellers because they didn't have a lot of confidence in it. But still, people love this particular book, love their X-Men. The total number of copies, Blue Label on the Census, is 9,154. Well, can you guess what number 1 on the list is? I think it's fairly obvious if you know anything about 1975 in comic books. It is Giant Size X-Men number 1 Len Wein story. Dave Cockrum art, Gil Kane and Dave Cockrum cover. The first appearance of the new X-Men, the first appearances of Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Thunderbird, and the second full appearance of Wolverine. This is the one that started it all. And again, as I referenced, Chris Claremont was not involved in the creation of these characters. It was Len Wein. I'm not sure they knew what to do with Wolverine, but Wolverine kind of fit the bill of let's get characters from around the world. This is a mix. Aurora from Africa, Colossus from the Soviet Union, Nightcrawler from Germany, Thunderbird being a Native American. They got Banshee from Ireland. They got, for a short period of time, Sunfire from Japan and Wolverine from Canada. So that, I think, was one of the more intriguing aspects of the book, that Xavier is going out to get more international characters. This one is, again, one of the 3 biggest books of the Bronze Age, I would say, along with Amazing Spider-Man 129 and Incredible Hulk 181, because X-Men is such a popular title and IP for Marvel. This is a huge book, and the total number of Blue Label copies on the Census is 13,096, including 199. Moving on. Let's count down the rest of the list and the rest of the Marvel and DC top 10. Well, 9 of the top 10 books were Marvel books, so we only need to go to number 11 to get the top 10 books from Marvel, and it's another number 1. It is Invaders number 1. Roy Thomas story, Frank Robbins and Vinnie Coletta did the interior art, and John Romita did the cover. There was a Giant Size Invaders number 1, which is not as popular, kind of like Giant Size X-Men number 1. Let's introduce the characters. We're introduced in the Golden Age, but the team was in Avengers, I think it's 71. That's what I remember at the top of my head. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure folks will. I'm not perfect. But this Roy Thomas liked, he's a big Golden Age fan. So what he did is he brought the 3 big heroes of Timely's Golden Age, Captain America, the Human Torch, and the Submariner together as a team to fight during World War II. Invaders lasted for 41 issues, an annual Giant Size, and it expanded the roster. It also included some new characters and some other characters from Timely's Golden Age. The fact of the matter is, there are many more characters from DC that were relevant in the Silver and Bronze Age and beyond from their Golden Age than Marvel. or timely. And I honestly think the DC stories are easy to read, and I think that's also true of quality comics. A lot of those characters DC bought and brought back, and to a lesser degree, the Fawcett. The Fawcett is basically the Marvel family. But DC did a lot of work in reprinting those stories and keeping them in the consciousness of comics readers, especially kids like me that were reading these books in 1975. Invaders #1 comes in with a census count of 1,743. The next book on the list is Strange Tales 178, Jim Starlin's story, cover and art. This is where the Warlock stories begin in Strange Tales, taking over from, I think, did Brother Voodoo go all the way to 177? I think so. And Jim Starlin did this big epic. The indicia says Strange Tales and Warlock. It's the first appearance of Magus, who's kind of the reverse. And there was a lot of, during the comic boom, there were 2 enormous sales of this book, 9/8. There were a lot of speculation about the character until Will Poulter was finally cast in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then people saw it and went, oh. They didn't really fully flesh him out or use him to the degree I think fans wanted them to. But this is a popular run. I think it's a more popular run now than it was at the time. Warlock really, he had his fandom here, but I think it really expanded with the Infinity Sagas in the comics in the 1980s. But at any rate, this particular book comes in with a census count of 1,654. Next book on the list is a magazine from Marvel. It is Marvel Preview #2. It is the first Punisher solo story. It's also the first appearance of Dominic Fortune, character created by Howard Chaykin, who created a similar character over at Atlas Seaboard, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video. Jerry Conway and Len Wein did the stories. Gray Morrow did the cover. Tony DeZuniga, I guess he did the Punisher story, and Howie Chaykin did the Dominic Fortune story. So yeah, these Marvel preview books a little more adult themed, but they're magazine size. So this one has a census count of 806. The next book on the list is another book that oddly had one enormous sale in a 9/8. I said, if it sold for over $5,000 at Heritage, I'll consider it. I don't talk a lot about values of the books on this because that's not what these videos are about. It's more about looking at comics that are popular among collectors and their place in comic book history. And also independence, and it kind of always triggers in me, ooh, I want that, which is dangerous. But in Amazing Spider-Man 143, Jerry Conway did the story. Ross Andrew, Frank Giacoya, and Dave Hunt did the art. Gil Kane and John Romita did the cover. First appearance is Cyclone. Okay. Census count of 597. Now we got to kind of run down a bunch of DC books. This is the second DC book on the list from 1975, and his first issue special, #8, the first appearance of Warlord by Mike Grell. Now, first issue special was maybe a little bit confusing because there was only one first issue. This is issue #8 of first issue special. And it wasn't always first appearances either. It ran for, I think, 11 issues, and it had a different character in each issue. Some new characters like Warlord, some reboots of characters like Dr. Fate or Metamorpho, who had existed, and they gave their own book too. Warlord got his own book shortly thereafter, which ran for 133 issues. I believe all of them done by Mike Grell. Mike Grell stuck with it. He basically cultivated Warlord, which was I think a fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force who crash landed in like Antarctica or the Himalayas, in this place which is much like the Savage Lands in Marvel Comics. This place that's very mystical and has, dinosaur-like creatures and magic and all sorts of fun stuff. But at any rate, this is the first appearance of Warlord, and this has a census count of 516. A true first issue, which is Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter #1. Denny O'Neil did the story. Leopoldo Doranona did the art, and Dick Giordano did the cover. This is the first appearance of Richard Dragon. It's also the first appearance of of Ben Stanley, who later becomes Bronze Tiger. And the Richard Dragon book ran for 18 issues. I think this was, listen, martial arts movies were very popular, especially amongst a demographic that probably had a pretty strong crossover with comic books. And you already saw the success of Master Kung Fu and Iron Fist over at Marvel. So DC jumped in with Richard Dragon, I guess to moderate success. 430 copies on the Census. The fourth DC book on the list is The Joker #2, the second issue in his ongoing series. Denny O'Neil did the story. Irv Novick and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez did the art. Ernie Chan, who is DC's cover artist du jour, kind of following the footsteps of Neil Adams and Nick Cardy, doing a lot of different covers. He did the cover along with Garcia Lopez. And 350 copies on the Census. The next book is from Marvel, and this is an interesting one. It's Foom #10. This is a Marvel in-house fanzine. Dave Cockrum did the cover. There's a new X-Men article and a centerfold. And this predates Giant Size X-Men #1, potentially. There's a little bit of controversy about that, but that seems to be the prevailing opinion among collectors, that Foom 10 came first. And I know a lot of people seek this out. It's pretty expensive. Shout out to my buddy Otto from 3 Men in a Basement, who was chasing a copy of this book and did get a copy. For X-Men collectors, it is kind of once you have that run complete, and you have your Giant Size and your 94, and maybe even you could collect the Silver Age. But if you're a new X-Men fan, this is kind of a chase, and it has sold for pretty high values. The total Census count on this is just 313. I mean, compare that to the thousands and thousands of books that are available in the regular run. And that's just graded books. Up next is our first non-DC and Marvel book. It is Captain Canuck #1 from Comely Comics. Richard Comely did the story and the art, created this Canadian superhero. This ran for 14 issues, kind of sporadically through 1981, and then a 15th issue in 2004. There have been other iterations of Captain Canuck, but this is like Canadian comic books had kind of gone by the wayside after World War II. There were reprints of stuff in Canada, but not their own unique material. But here we get Captain Canuck. This got a little more popular at the beginning of the year, where there was, the 51st state stuff and what have you, to kind of, bolster Canadian independence. So this particular book comes in with a Census count of 313. There's still more DC books to go through. First issue special #1. So this actually is a first issue. It's the first appearance of Atlas, who is based on the mythological character, and it's by Jack Kirby. One of his final works at DC before moving back to Marvel. And a first issue special, one issue, boom. We didn't see Atlas again until 2008 in Superman 677. They brought him in and he became part of regular continuity. But this particular book, Atlas' first appearance in first issue special #1, has a Census count of 291. 291. We're going to keep going. The sixth DC book on the list is Joker #4. Elliot S. Magan wrote the story. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez and Vinny Coletta did the art. And Ernie Chan did the cover with a Green Arrow crossover. 275 copies on the Census. Coming in at number 66 on the list, we're back to Marvel with a first appearance. This is Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, #19. And this is the first appearance of the White Tiger. Chris Claremont, Bill Mantlo did the stories. Jim Starlin did a frontispiece. Bob Larkin did the cover. And the White Tiger, the first Hispanic superhero in Marvel Comics. He was of Puerto Rican origin. And fittingly, George Perez did the art on that first story. He would appear later in comic books in Spectacular Spider-Man, but this is his first appearance in a magazine. These are black and white magazines. And this particular book has a Census count of 271. The next book on the list is the seventh DC book on the list, and is Joker #3, Denny O'Neil story, Ernie Chan, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez art, and Dick Giordano to the cover. Appearance by the Creeper. Joker is like probably of this era the most collectible and high grade, because I have to imagine, like, and I'm a DC collector, right? The same was true of Swamp Thing, like in the previous couple of years. Joker only ran for 9 issues. So it's really easy to collect all 9 of them and try to get them in high grade if you're a big Joker fan. You can't do that with Batman or Detective Comics or World's Finest Superman, Action, Flash, Green Lantern. Any of those books, Justice League, there are just too many of them. But I guess, in terms of grading, Joker's always going to be popular. Joker covers will always be popular. The next DC book on the list is Tales of Ghost Castle #1. This is the I guess second wave of DC Bronze Age horror, right? They had House of Secrets, House of Mystery, Witching Hour, Ghosts, etc. And then they came up with a couple more titles here in the mid-70s. Ghost Castle was not that popular. It only ran for 3 issues. Here we have an Ernie Chan cover, which is a pretty cool one. And you had Paul Levitz and Dave Michelini writing stories, Nestor Redondo, Ruben Yandak, Kiro Redondo did the art, and Sergio Aragones did a gag page. Again, if you're a DC collector and a horror collector, these 3 issues you can collect, boom, boom, boom. Not that difficult to put together. This census count here is 224. The 9th DC book on the list is Secrets of Haunted House #1. And this also was, very much an anthology book, a bunch of different stories. Luis Dominguez did the cover. So I would say the way that they fit in is that you don't have the big cover artists on these. You're going to get Adams, Wrightson, and Carty are probably going to be the most sought after, less so Luis Dominguez. No, shade on Luis Dominguez, but he's just not as popular an artist, even though this is a pretty cool cover. Secrets of Haunted House did last for 46 issues. And this particular book comes in with the total of 202 Blue Label copies on the old Census. And finally, the 10th DC book on the list is Batman Family #1, Elliot S. Maggin story, Mike Grell cover and art. This team up with Robin and Batgirl. This was it's a giant book. It was 50 cents as opposed to 25. It was square bound. And generally speaking, there was one new story, and then the rest were reprints. So you see down at the bottom there, Alfred Commissioner Gordon Man-Bat. I'm pretty sure, I haven't read this book in quite a while, that those are all reprints. But I think that, and you can tell, this is coming out at the very end of 1975, and there's this guy dressed up like, I don't know if he's supposed to be George Washington or something, but it's kind of like has a bicentennial theme, even though it's still 1975. They're obviously at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and pretty cool Mike Grell cover. 173 copies on the Census. Now let's go to some other publishers. Charlton is next on our list, and the top book from Charlton is Scooby-Doo #1, having gotten the rights to comic books from Gold Key, which produced the first Scooby-Doo #1. This is the Charlton Scooby-Doo #1. And we all know about Scooby and the gang. And this has a total of 137 copies on the Census. Now, there's another Charlton book that's just trailing by 1, so I think it's useful to include it. And it is Space 1999 #1. This Nicola Cutie story, Joe Staton, Tom Sutton art, and a Joe Staton cover. This was based on a British-produced syndicated TV series, sci-fi series starring, and you can see their depictions on the cover, Martin Landau and Barbara Bain, who were husband and wife team. It started Mission Impossible about 10 years earlier. Martin Landau ended up winning an Academy Award for Ed Wood. Fun fact, my friend's brother is an extra in Ed Wood. Right? So there's the scene where Ed Wood and the Bill Murray character go to like a wrestling match to, get the wrestler that's going to appear in their movies. And so in the shot of the crowd, they're talking to each other and they're surrounded by fans. And he's like you watch TV in the upper left-hand corner. So that was kind of fun to see somebody I grew up with in that Ed Wood movie. But that has nothing to do with Space 1999. It was a TV series that ran for 2 seasons, 48 episodes. And basically it was the future. They were in this moon base. There was garbage on the moon, and there was nuclear garbage, and exploded and sent the moon off its own direction away from the Earth. So they kind of had to survive. I watched this all the time as a kid, right? It came out 75 to 77, so I was like 9, 10 years old. Fun stuff. 136 copies on the Census. Now, let's go to another publisher, which is important to talk about. And I mentioned them in last week's video about 1974, and this is Atlas Seaboard Comics. Their top book is Phoenix #1, with a Jeff Rovin story and Sal Amendola art, origin first appearance of Phoenix. So, as it was, there was a breakaway. There's some people that broke away, including Larry Lieber, Stan Lieber's brother, left Marvel Comics and started Atlas. It was Martin Goodman. It was Martin Goodman who started the company, and they copied Marvel to a great degree, including that banner across the top that Marvel was putting on their comics at the time. It said Marvel Comics Group. Here you see Atlas Comics. They were very ambitious. They had a number of magazines. They had a number of different titles, but no title. This title lasted 4 issues, and that was the most of any Atlas Seaboard book. So it's kind of very niche. The intellectual property is still owned by Atlas Seaboard, and they made a big deal at last year's Comic-Con of teaming up with Mego, who produced action figures, to have their line of Mego action figures. And I'm like, the market for that is fairly niche, right? There are people who like their Atlas Seaboard, and it's fairly easy to collect almost all of it. There are a couple of magazines that are in the horror stuff that's harder to get. But I come across these all the time. Phoenix #1 has a census count of 131, and I wanted to also include the second book from Atlas Seaboard, and that's The Destructor #1. Archie Goodwin story, Steve Ditko and Wally Wood art, Larry Lieber and Wally Wood cover. So there's some good stuff. There's, Chaykin, Rich Buckler worked for them, and actually Chaykin brought one of his characters over and basically took the character and just changed the name and it became Dominic Fortune. So this also lasted just 4 issues, and it has a census count of 129. Keep on moving. We are at Gold Key. The top Gold Key book for 1975 is Star Trek number 30. Albert Giolitti cover and art. Star Trek is a bestseller. If collectors look for anything Star Trek, it's this series, right? The #1 is a very highly sought after issue. Most of the subsequent series, not so much. 103 copies on the census. And from Warren, and this surprised me a little bit, just a little bit. Their top book is Famous Monsters of Filmland number 114, 100-page special issue featuring all of Japan's monsters. I imagine that's Godzilla and Rodan on the cover, by Ken Kelly. Usually your top book from Warren's going to be Vampirella or something Vampirella-esque, but not this year. 68 copies on the census. From Harvey, another kind of surprise. It's not Richie Rich or Richie Rich's whatever. It does include Richie Rich. It's Astro Comics, no number. This was a giveaway by American Airlines. I guess they included it like in the little pouch there with the airline magazines. And it just includes stories of the Harvey Comics characters. It was a giveaway. And somebody's found copies, 64 copies on the census. From James Glenn. This is Hot Shot #1. George Perez art and cover. For Perez collectors, I guess, and this is one of those things like, ooh, is this now something I need to collect? I need to look for? And you can see the George Perez signature in the bottom right-hand corner of this book. 51 copies on the Census. Now we get to some undergrounds. Top book from Print Mint is Arcade, the Comics Review #1. R. Crumb and all the usual suspects. I think that is a Crumb cover. Spiegelman did interior art. And you got funny animals and sexual abuse on the cover. 42 copies on the Census. From Apex Novelties is Zap Comics with an X, Comics with an X, #8. Also an R. Crumb cover. And this guy is, I don't know, something with his brains now out of his head. Deep psychological insults and mystic revelations. There are Crumb collectors. It's going to be popular. 42 copies on the Census. The next book is from Last Gasp's top book. This is Amputee Love #1. Rich Jensen art and Brett Boat's cover. It's a book about... It's an adult book about sexual relations involving amputees. And there are a total of 35 copies on the Census. That ties it with the top book from A&W Publishing. And this is Mystico Greifel. I really tried on that one. Issue #2. This is I guess a fanzine, a journal. It's black and white. But this, and I've never seen anybody talk about this book. And this is definitely one of those things. It's like probably like hiding in boxes somewhere. I'm not sure there are a lot of copies of it. But this is also 1975. This cover is by Dave Stevens. And Dave Stevens, of course, like last year with the documentary, was hugely popular. Never seen any single person talk about this cover on YouTube. But now here I am talking about this Dave Stevens cover. It also includes a Scott Shaw art and John Pound, a Jack Kirby and Dan Rico interview, a back cover pinup by Neil Adams. You got Dave Stevens on the front and Neil Adams on the back. So that is pretty cool. I don't know if there's like anything. I mean, this has to be really early in Dave Stevens' career. Okay, earlier in the year, he did Destiny Science Fiction Fanzine #2 that has a Dave Stevens cover. There are only 3 copies of that on the Census. Yeah. And then he did a few things in 76. So this is really, I guess, his second published artwork. So that's pretty cool. And kind of, this, I guess, is like a hunt goal for Dave Stevens collectors. And again, I haven't heard anybody talk about it. He did some fanzines early on, so those are going to be harder to find. Pretty cool stuff. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Fine, very fine for $314, $423. A 6.5 for $3.99. This is, yeah, obviously an expensive book. That's interesting. The last sale was a Raw that somebody accepted a best offer for a listing of $225. I'll save this search. Whatever. Anyway, just kind of like, this is one of those things that I find interesting about doing this this list, is I find these things that I had never heard of. And I hope you find it interesting too. Staying with it, let's keep going. The next book is, this is also from Last Gasp, and I put it on because it was close to the Amputee Love #1. This is Cocaine Comics #1. There we go. A William Stout cover. I don't know what else to say about it. 34 copies on the Census. Go with a little bit, stay with the drugs, but do something a little bit milder. This is Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers. #4 from Ripoff Press, Gilbert Shelton cover and art. 25 copies on the Census. The next book from Keith Green, who was an art collector and comic publisher. This is 2, no number. S. Clay Wilson story cover and art. And you have this, I don't know, really weird stuff going on the cover. I've blacked out at least part of it. Oh, I got to probably black that out too. Yikes. Adult stuff, 20 copies on the Census. Next up, and this is an interesting one in terms of an underground. This is Big Apple Comics #1 from Big Apple Productions. Archie Goodwin, Al Williamson, Ralph Reese, Neil Adams, Herb Trimpe, Mike Plug, and Alan Weiss contributed to this book. And another Godzilla Rodan cover. Anyway, this is kind of an interesting one. Just because of the creators involved, I find it interesting. 19 copies on the Census. From CPL Gang Publications, this is Charlton Bullseye #1. This is not to be confused with the Charlton Bullseye that was published by Charlton in the early 1980s. This is a fanzine that was outsourced. Al Milgram and Joe Staten cover. Text stories, Steve Ditko, John Byrne, Jones, Sutton, Staten art. Pretty cool cover with Captain Adam. Again, this is a fanzine about Charlton. 18 copies on the Census. The next book is White. Yeah, Funnies. This is from Full Horn Productions. And Larry Fuller and Ray Horn cover story and art. This is an adult book. More and more of these adult books are dealing very frankly with sex. This seems to be another one. This one, 17 copies on the Census. From Skywald comes Psycho #24, a horror magazine. That has 16 copies on the Census. From Nostalgia Inc., their top book is Comic Reprints Present #12. It's a reprint of Whiz Comics #2, which is the first issue of Whiz Comics. First appearance of Captain Marvel, also first appearance of Savannah and Spy Smasher and Ibis, etc. The reprint has, these are, I believe, black and white interiors. 14 copies on the Census, which makes it very similar to the top book from Alan Light. This is Flashback #29, a reprint of Captain America Comics #2. 13 copies on the Census. The top book from California Comics is Barbarian Women Comics #1. Larry Sidebottom, Barney Steele, Trina Robbins, Ron Harris, and Ed Watson art. Yeah, you get sword and sorcery with kind of naked women, and I think it's based in. No, they're wearing like jeans and I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But this one has 12 copies on the Census. The top book from Ike Horn is Mucklebrook'n. I don't know what it is. No number. This is, and actually Heritage had a description of the book in one of their listings of a raw book. The Moscow Duck Review. Published in 1975 on newsprint, this oddball underground rarely shows up in even the biggest collections. Here's a copy signed by artist Ike Horn. Apparently the title, which loosely translates to Moscow Duck Review, was inspired by a news article about the Hornacker's pet duck who was abducted in Moscow, Idaho. This appears to have been a class project from the University of Idaho. The print run was a mere 1,500, many of which wound up in the hands of students and friends. Yeah, okay. Total number of copies on the Census is 11, which ties it with the top book from Red Circle Productions, which is Red Circle Sorcery #11, which features a Gray Morrow cover. Just a Bronze Age horror book from an independent publisher. 11 copies on the Census. The top book from Street Enterprises is Comic Reader #117 with a Tom Gill cover of the Lone Ranger. This is like essentially a comics fanzine. 10 copies on the Census, which ties it with the top book from Star Reach, which is Star Reach #2. Where the heck? Oh my goodness. which has I believe this is a Richard Corbin cover. No, I'm sorry, it's a Neil Adams cover of Star Reach #2. There are 10 copies of that on the Census. Our next book is Mad Super Special #1, the top book from EC, which included a reprint of Mad, I think it's #4. 9 copies in the Census, which ties it with Castle of Frankenstein #25. Another magazine from Gothic Castle Publishing this time. And this was more of a magazine fanzine, more than a comic book. There are 9 copies of this on the Census. Our next book is National Lampoon #64. Stevie Wonder wearing 3D glasses on the cover. 6 copies on the Census. Next is from the top book from Christian Spire Comics. This is the second year in a row their top book has been an Archie book. It's Archie's Parables. And what I'm going to take from this is like biblical stories with Archie characters. Maybe. Al Hartley did the cover. 5 copies in the Census, which ties it. This is kind of interestingly, I think very interestingly, the top book from Archie is so far down on the list this year. It's Archie All-Star Special Giant Spectacular Comics. There are just 5 copies on the Census. That's your top Archie book, so there are obviously no innuendo or overly sexy Betty or Veronica covers from 1975. Up next is Bizarre Sex #4, the top book from Kitchen Sink Enterprises, manufactured with a white retailer protection cover. And it's good because there's a lot to protect in this. It's very adult. This has 3 copies on the Census, which ties it with a completely different kind of bird. Is Kite Fun book, no number, Gas and Pacific Gas and Electric Company, 2003, the Ben Franklin Bicentennial book. 3 copies on the Census. And our final book is the top book from Comics and Comics, one with CS, one with an X, and that is Spaced #2. 2 copies on the Census. Whew, that's going to do it for 1975 on the CGC Census. I'd like to thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoy these videos. I do enjoy researching them and making them, so give us a follow and recommend it to a friend. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You'll be back for more. We'll be back next year with 1976. Top book from 1976. I have my thoughts. And I'll let you know if I'm right or not. I was right for 1975. A New Giant Size X-Men #1. In the meantime, you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying, until next time, enjoy your comics.